Hey, and welcome to my channel. My name is Chrissy Hodges. I'm a certified peer support specialist working with people all over the world who live with OCD. I'm the author of Pure OCD, The Invisible Side of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, and I do referral consultations and run 8-week closed peer support groups if you are looking for support. Thank you for being here. I wanted to say that I know in my last video, I told you that I'm going to be doing videos about specific themes, and I'm still doing that, but I just had an opportunity today, and I've got some good friends of mine here that maybe you'll recognize a couple of them, an OCD advocacy, and they're going to share a little bit of a message of hope. And I just wanted to get this done while they're here and give that to you if that's something that you're looking for. But first, I want to share with you why I wanted to talk about this topic. And NoCD is an app. NoCD, inside the app, they have many ways to connect with individuals who have OCD and a lot of resources, but they also do telehealth ERP. So check them out at treatmyocd.com to see if that is something you're interested in and ready for, and if they do it in your area. So I wanted to talk with you, and this will feed into when they come back, and they're all in the back right now, because I was like, don't sit here while I'm doing the video. They're gonna come in and just share quick messages of hope, because each one of them have OCD. And all three of them have gone on now to do work in the OCD community as advocates and also as therapists and researchers. But I wanted to share with you why I wanted to do this video. This came up in a group the other day, and it was something that I had brought up, and it was just something I've been struggling with, and a really big lesson I've had to learn over the last probably year and a half, but more so in the last 6 months. And when I brought it up into group, so many people shared and related to it so much that I thought it might be worth it to talk to you about it and see if this is something that you experience too. When we have difficult things that happen in life, or when life is happening in general, and especially I want to relate this to OCD, when we're in a time where we're struggling, whether it's OCD or whether it's just life things in general, when things are uncertain and we just have to sit in things until they resolve, or until emotions resolve, or until things can be all better. Because y'all know how it is with OCD. We're hyper aware all the time of how we're responding to things, and are things okay, and are things ever going to be better? And one of the things I've really had to learn recently in my life is to trust the process. So what does that mean? Trusting the process is OCD and anxiety disrupts that mantra. The process is life is happening, and life is going to happen, and there are a lot of things that happen out of our control. And when you don't know how to trust the process, because you have to sit in stress or discomfort or anxiety or grief or all these big things, and you don't know how to sit through them, obviously, that's when OCD develops, or that's what we think back on our OCD experience. Trusting the process is allowing life to unfold without knowing what the outcome is going to be. And how scary is that for me and you? When we have OCD, that's all we want, is we want the certainty. We want to know everything's going to be okay. When we have bad feelings, when we have bad thoughts, bad anxiety, we just want to know it's going to resolve. And the way that we try to resolve it is try to find the answer. And what we know about OCD and anxiety is there is no answer. Remember my videos? There's no answer because there's no problem. And so trusting the process, to me, and a lot of this has come up in the last, I would say, month or two. A lot of this I have discovered because I've had to trust the process, and I don't know how. And that has been a huge revelation for me. So my question for you is, do you know how? Were you taught how to trust the process? Meaning, were you taught to trust that when bad things happen, or when you are scared, or you have a very big, heavy emotion, that you can get all the way through it and then be okay? Was that taught to you? Was that modeled to you? What was it like for you when you were younger and you would have big emotions or something bad happen? Were there people there for you? Did they say, you're going to be okay, you can get through this, you can endure this? Were you validated? Because that's what I have realized just recently. And how it relates so much to my OCD has just been mind-blowing. And so I'm learning all this stuff about myself, and I'm learning that I was never taught to trust the process of life. And I always had to be scared. I always had to try to control everything so I could control the outcome, because we're not supposed to feel this way, or you're not allowed to feel, or it's wrong to feel this way, or bad things happen. I can think of loss in my life when I was younger, and there was never any resolution. There was never any comfort. There was never any, I don't want to go into my childhood trauma, but I was not taught that I can get through these things and they can be okay. And it's almost like OCD came in and put this big barrier up, right? And I would hit against this barrier, and I wasn't able to go all the way through and go, man, things can work out. Things can be okay. So at that barrier, I started to try to control everything, and still do. And I fight against that control. I do every day. And a lot of that is OCD, and a lot of that's just me needing to know, wanting to know, what if this doesn't happen? What if I never feel okay again? And so with that, I also wanted to bring up 2 points before I bring these guys in. This is where faith and hope comes in. Now, you can use the word faith however you want to use it, whether that's religious, whether that's whatever. But faith for me is trusting. No, we're all good. Hold on one second. Is trusting the process. And I've had to learn how to do that. And the faith piece is not, I'm going to have faith that everything's going to be how I want it to be. I wish. Don't we? But the compulsions and being an OCD might tell me that if I do this and I do that and I ruminate and I blah, 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 I mentally review, I'm going to be able to control it. And all it does is delay the process for me. Delay the process of just feeling my way through and seeing that I can be okay. That's what faith is for me. And you insert whatever faith is for you into that. And then hope, of course, is just believing that it can be okay. I have a lot of hope that, I guess in the trusting the process discussion we're having right now, like, I just keep hope that the best things for me are always going to work out. And I have to resist trying to control whether or not I have an influence on that. Y'all know what I'm talking about. If you have OCD, you know what I'm talking about. So I want to share with you before I bring in my guests. And these are the questions I'm going to ask them. What gave me hope in what gives me and gave me hope in my darkest hour with OCD, or just life in general? For me, what gave me and gives me hope, I guess would be you as a community, knowing that I, in a way, have a responsibility to show up for you, and you show up for me. I have a responsibility for the relationships that I've cultivated because of this work that I do. I have a responsibility to them. But I guess what gives me hope, this is what gives me hope. I have learned over and over and over, life can change in an instant. That can be bad and scary, by the way, hearing that, but it also can be okay depending on how we angle it. Angles. So in my darkest times, I think that's what I remember. Things could change tomorrow. And they could be different and they could be better. And so what gives me hope now? The same. But really what gives me hope now is keeping an eye on my goals and striving to continue to learn who Chrissy is on her own as her authentic self. Man, that's tough because I'm scared I'm not going to like her or no one else will. But that gives me hope now. So those are the 2 questions I'm going to ask my guests, and I'm going to bring one of them in now. Johnny Say. Yay.
Hello.
Look, everybody's clapping. Come on in, Johnny.
Hi, Chrissy. Hi, everyone.
This is Johnny, and he is from the UK, and he's a therapist, and he joined us for our advocacy retreat, and he also has OCD. And so I have 2 questions for you today.
Sure.
What gave you hope or helped you to have faith that things were going to be better in your darkest hour? There's a camera right there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think historically, going back when I was younger and I didn't know that I had OCD, but I was really struggling, I think it was really just having passions and interests. So I had sort of very physical hobbies or things I was doing that even if my mind was just blowing up and I was having these really intense emotional experiences, I could just go skateboarding or do martial arts, something like that, and just, at least have a little bit of a break from it for that time. So I think that was really something that gave me hope and sort of got me through that. But then later, discovering my own sort of way of working with OCD and, going through therapy, ERP, and then discovering ACT. Certainly now the hope is around the skills that you can cultivate and the different relationship you can have with your thoughts and your feelings, and how you can tap into, the life you want to build even with this difficult stuff.
So if someone is watching this right now and they're struggling, what would you say to them to help cultivate hope in their own experience?
Well, I would say, I would come at it from the self-compassion point of view. So, those of us with OCD are often very kind. Almost always, everyone I've ever talked to is very kind to others. So, just trying to look at that asymmetry of how we treat ourselves and flip that around. And then, that compassion can carry you through those difficult moments and give you some hope. But then, I would find something that you can give yourself, you can really deeply engage in, like the first thing that I found helpful, any hobby you like. And if you're so lost and you can't decide on that, just go back in the past, what was good, or just look around you and just pick something that could be helpful, and then get some help, be relentless in your search for what works for you, and really discover your way of bringing together these processes that are helpful, and hang on in there, and things do change. It gets easier for sure.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Johnny.
Thanks, guys.
Sophie. Everybody's clap. Come here, Sophie. Hey.
Hello.
This is Sophie Surrey.
Hey.
Sophie is a researcher over in the UK doing research on OCD. Lots of cool stuff coming out this year, we hope. So you heard the question, but I'll repeat it again. What gave you hope and faith to keep going in the darkest times?
I think what gave me the biggest faith is having a connection back to myself and finding, I think when I was at my worst, I had sort of surrender. I couldn't control anymore. I was exhausted. And in that process, even though it felt so vulnerable and so scary, I kind of found this kind of practice where it's practicing taking a risk and practicing knowing that actually something much greater than us is working with us to guide us in life. And by practicing each little step and just taking little risks and listening to that little whisper that says, go left. And the ones we ignore, when I listen to it, it's only a whisper. The OCD roars really loud, but the little whisper might be, go left, do this, read that book, go into that bookstore, contact that person. Every time I follow that, I always end up in the right place. There's fear, but that when I follow that tiny little voice, I always end up connecting to the right person. I've connected to Chrissy, I've connected to Stuart and Johnny. It's why I'm here now, doing what I'm doing, because I've listened to that little voice and taken baby steps. And I think the more I've listened to it, the more I've moved forward and been like, I just sometimes just looked and thought, wow, how did this happen? How did I end up here? How did these people come into my life? And it's because I listened to that small little voice and had faith in the process. I think when I was that bad, I just had to surrender. And for me, it's now an ongoing practice. My natural, habitual kind of response to most things is to try and control it.
We're like the same person.
Seriously, I would control anything and everything. And so now it's more, I have the awareness of, okay, I'm trying to control things, and I do still control a lot. However, I also have the ability now to be like, actually, I've got evidence. I practice listening to that little voice, and the evidence is I'm sat here today with Chrissy when years ago I was sat in a small room not knowing what to do, how I would ever get out of it, and listening to that small little voice, practice listening to the little, you know, if something in you is like, go into that bookstore, read that book, reach out to that person, do it, because that often is a guide to where you need to be. It's like, follow what lights you up, follow that small little light, even though it's so dark. If you follow that small light, the thing that kind of, that inner knowing, we all have it, learning to connect with it, and to use that as, you know, to navigate a life with OCD. Doesn't make it easy, doesn't mean it will be an easy journey. My journey is still not easy, but I have the tools and I have that light to follow, and I have that faith that I know it always gets me where I'm meant to be, even in the times when I have no idea where it's taken me and I can't understand the route it's taken me. But if I trust it, I always end up on the right path.
So before I ask her to give the advice, I also want to say that a lot of people with OCD will say, I don't know how to trust my gut, right? And it's always shrouded in that fear. Or, you know, you have family stuff that's getting in the way, or you have job stuff, you have all this stuff. But I mean, I know it can be hard when you've been through OCD or trauma or things like that to trust your gut. But I think what she's saying is sometimes there's that little whisper, that little thing inside of you that you know is the right thing or what you want. And it's okay to take that chance or that risk, right? Because it can be life-changing. And like I said earlier, what gets me through is tomorrow could be completely different. So I just have to keep going. But I wanted to clarify that because I know a lot of you are like, I don't know how to trust my gut. Sometimes you have to listen pretty hard, and you have to listen carefully, and you have to take a risk, and it pays off. So
practice doing it in small bits.
Yeah.
Start with something really small. You know, I remember I had these feelings like when I was really bad, I was like, I need to go in that bookstore. I should go in, and I'd be ignoring it, thinking, oh, I don't need to. I'll just walk straight past. And I remember going in this one time to a bookstore in the UK. I was like, something was just like that urge, like I need to go in. And I picked up this book, and that book was by a spiritual teacher called Wayne Dyer. And that led me onto the first step of many steps that have got me forward. And I kept listening to, if I thought, oh, I should contact that person, I did it. And that these weren't big steps, but they all built like little breadcrumbs, and they got me to where I am.
Teaches you to trust yourself.
Yeah, after having like 5 of them, I was like, oh, well, actually it does work, and keep going. So practice small, practice taking tiny little risks every day, and they don't have to be big. I still take tiny little risks, and you don't have to do it perfectly. I don't do it perfectly by any means.
So if someone is listening to this and they're struggling to find hope or faith in the process, what would you say to encourage them right now?
I would say connect to community.
Yes.
I would say reach out, because, you know, Chrissy, Stuart, Johnny, there's been so many people who've reminded me that actually that they're a few steps ahead, and they've reminded me that there is hope. So it's connecting back to other people when I couldn't see the hope myself. I've had to kind of I've had to let them be my hope, you know, and help them show me back to where I can go. So I'd say connect to community, and they will show you the way. That'll probably be the biggest thing I'd say.
Sophie has been my hope, my source of hope for the last.
And you've been mine
months.
hugely.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
This is Sophie Surrey.
Thank you very much.
Last but not least, you may know and love him as he just like got all riled up like Rocky would. It's Mr. Stuart Ralph. Woohoo! Hi, Stu.
Yeah.
If you don't know him, Stu is the founder and operates the OCD Stories. So if you haven't heard the OCD Stories, I don't have one either, then go check them out. They're all kinds of stories of lived experience, therapeutic, so awesome. So Stu, you've heard the questions, but
please ask
just
them.
repeat. In your darkest times, back when you had OCD, or sometimes in dark times right now, what gives you hope? What keeps the faith that you can get through this, and that you can move forward?
When I was a teenager, so really young and really in probably my darkest place, I don't think I had anything, to be honest. it was just I have to keep going. That was the only thing that kept me going. Was I had thoughts of suicide, but there was I didn't have a plan. But yeah, I just had to keep going. So I can't really give advice in my darkest moment, other than there was something in my head saying you've just got to keep going, and that's always been there throughout my life. In any tough thing, of just keep going. So that's, I guess, something to share. But around that time, I did start skateboarding, and that was an incredible, like Johnny, that was an incredible support for me. Like when I was on it, my mind just went blank, and for whatever the 4 hours I was doing it, I was almost OCD free. So that was, and as part of that, I developed a really strong community, which I think gave me that companionship and distance from my thoughts. And then in terms of hope, so now that keep going is still there for me. I also know to reach out to friends and speak up more, which I didn't when I was a teenager. There's a OCD community is incredibly helpful. Knowing, like Johnny said, the skills that I've got, those that if I start to get anxious or triggered, like we're flying today, and that still makes me pretty anxious. So as that comes in, I know to use my skills to catch it, to try and make space for it so it doesn't blow up into this big where I'm almost like panicking. So having those skills and tools there, and knowing that I have seen it get better before, that even if I have a relapse or lapse, I can get back to where I was. So that gives me a lot of kind of hope and confidence, I guess.
Cool. Well, if there was someone listening right now and they were really struggling to, and maybe even like in a place where you felt like when you were a teenager and they can't really find the way to move forward, what would your advice be to them?
Well, everyone's situation's different, right? So I was initially going to say, well, there's the internet now, which I didn't really have at that age. So teens are lucky in that sense. They can go listen to 300 hours of my podcast, your videos, probably 300 hours, not more. You know, Johnny's put loads of stuff on, Sophie advocates, there's millions of advocates is what I'm saying. So there's so much, and books are cheap, relatively cheap, and you know, like John Abramowitz's book's really good, Getting Over OCD. So where am I going with this? But yeah, the reason I caveated that is even if with the internet, people might have more severe family situations than I have, which makes it way harder, or cultural differences. So it's not quite as easy as saying you've got the internet now. But that being said, you do have the internet now.
Connection.
Exactly, the connection is a huge part. I always tell people go onto support groups. There's lots of online support groups. The UK charities do them, I think.
Online support groups.
Yeah, Chrissy does them, obviously.
I do.
The ISDF do them, maybe not, I'm not sure. Anyway, there's tons out there. So it's like, do that, build that community. I've seen that a lot in people I know of OCD that have developed friends of OCD. It kind of helps. I see that in my clients, a lot of them, teens don't want to join support groups.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because I know that if they did, it would help so much with the shame and also the motivation to keep going in the treatment. But there's a social embarrassment piece for that age, and probably for adults too.
Sure.
But I think, community, as Johnny said, like, what was it? Be relentless and like finding the right therapy and treatment that works for you. I'm an integrative therapist. I look from all different angles. ERP is a big part of it, but I also look for other things too, especially if ERP decides not to work for someone. What else is useful? I think just remembering that it will get better, probably. I can't guarantee that, but as Winston Churchill says, get the flag again. Ready? You're going through hell, keep going. That's what he said.
Yeah, you can.
Because if you keep going, you'll get out of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice.
If you haven't checked out the OC stories, please go. You'll love it. And especially look at the episodes where I'm on, because I think that those are the best. And I think Stu has even said that the ones I'm on are the best.
Anyway.
Thank you, Stu.
Thank you.
I'm so glad they were able to share that with you. I hope that it was helpful. And then my final words for you are this. I know how dark it can get. Okay, I've been there. I've been there in my darkest days with OCD. I've been there in my darkest days of life. And I know sometimes you think to yourself, I cannot keep going. This feeling is never going to end. And what I want to reiterate, what I want to reiterate from what Stu just said is that it can get better, sometimes you just have to keep going. And I have learned that even recently in my life, that when sometimes you're overwhelmed with feelings and you think it will never get better, that can change at any given moment and any given day. Tomorrow is a new day. So just keep going, trust the process, keep the faith in whatever that means in your life, and just have hope. So many of us have been there where you're at right now. And I send out a lot of love and empathy to you. I hope this was helpful. And I will be back in a few days with my first video of my series on themes. But again, keep the hope, keep the faith that things can get better, because they can. Much love to you, and I will see you next time.